Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? I hope fine. I hope everybody had all that turkey they said they were not going to eat, right? I had a very tiny amount of turkey myself. Um, like I mentioned to you last time, uh, even though LA started a lockdown for outside eating, the city of Pasadena, which is a separate county, and they have their separate health department, other than the LA health department. They said, hey, we're going to have our places open for outside dining, not inside. So I just didn't want to stay home and do nothing that day. So I went and drove to Pasadena and found many places were open. So I stayed away from the downtown. It was too much traffic and no parking. The garage was full. So I drove down Colorado and went down Walnut, the two biggest streets, and found El Torito Mexican place. And even though it was Mexican food, they had some turkey and some ham. So I participated a little bit in the American festivities. So I hope that you guys change your mind and maybe had a little bit of turkey. All right. So this video is scheduled for, as I look at my trusty calendar here, December the 7th. Okay. And that means that this is the last video for the quarter. And the next week we will have the final. And that should be exciting. That will be our last Zoom meeting for the quarter. So just to bring you up on that, and remember the final will be from the midterm chapters on. What you did before the midterm test, forget it. For the test, it's gone. Don't worry about it. I don't want to give you too much information. So just the two half points are fine. All right. So, oh, and we're going to do two. The last chapters of the book are small, so I had to mix the two again. So you will see we're going to do rehearse, 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 and then making you a better speaker. Going to mix them together because I think they're two good skills you need to have. All right. So let me get to the material. Okay. So let me take myself down to the bottom. Okay. And then you don't want to see my face, right? Goodbye. All right. That's there. So let me start the slideshow and then head to from the beginning. I'm waiting. Come on, up here. Doo-doo-doo. So school code, ENG 103. And you remember this is University of the East. Don't forget that. And this is our public speaking. Like I told you, scheduled for December the 7th. And, just so you need to know it's week 9. Next week will be week 10, our final week. So, okay. All right. Okay, so like I said, the first part of our two-parter this evening is rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. So we'll have to get into that. Rehearse is a very important part of having a speech that's of a quality, okay? Of an A quality. And that's what you need. At least that's what we'll shoot for. Okay. So here we go. Reading from right here where it says in chapter 2. In chapter 2, managing fear. So we all learned that was very, very important to manage your fear. Once you're able to do that, you can proceed confidently with your speech. I expressed puzzlement, which means puzzlement is confusion. That's a word that's kind of disappearing from the American language. but puzzlement is confusion, and then expressed. So you can kind of say, I felt confused, right? As to why people who wouldn't for a second expect to be able to play like Oscar Peterson, who was a very famous pianist, the first time they sit down at a people, think an audience will expect them to perform like a Winston Churchill the first time they speak in front of a group. So you're a very young group. He was dead when I was born too, but Winston Churchill was the prime minister of England during World War II. And as England was being bombed by the Nazi Germans, they were destroying London. And he spoke and gave all the British people hope that they would survive and they would fight to the end. And they did emerge successful. So what they're saying here is, I expressed puzzlement again. I was confused as to why people who wouldn't for a second expect to play like Oscar Peterson. So that's saying, hey, regular people say, well, the very first time I try the piano, I don't expect to be an expert like him. But at the same time, they think that an audience will expect them to perform or give an inspiring speech like Winston Churchill the first time they speak in front of a group. So this, flows into the managing the fear. So it says here, of course, such expectations exist only in the mind of the rookie speaker. I don't know if you know the word rookie. Maybe if you're a guy and you follow sports, it means whatever, basketball, football, baseball, means the first year player. We used to say that for all kinds of things, but young people have substituted the word newbie for rookie. So I don't really hear young people using the word rookie, but they use newbie. So that's what it means. But technically, it means your first year of anything, that you partake in. You could be a rookie policeman, So what it's saying is people have these expectations of themselves, before you give your first speech. You're, oh my God, I must be so professional. I must be high level like a Winston Churchill to inspire. But that's not the case, especially if you're in a class and the students who are supposed to be your friends, they know that this is your first time. So they don't have these expectations of you. But people being nervous and insecure, you might have these expectations of yourself. So what they're saying here is drop it. Don't think that way. Don't put extra pressure on yourself that you don't need to. Okay, it says, I'm equally puzzled, though. So again, I'm equally confused as to why so many speakers, rookies, and seasoned veterans, which means people who have been doing speeches for a long time, their experience seasons them. You don't put seasoning like pepper or pochugaro on them. It's their experience has seasoned their techniques, right? Made them good. Think alike, and they don't need to rehearse. See, now there's a fault. He's equally confused why then a lot of beginning speakers feel, I don't have to practice. I don't have to rehearse. And sometimes seasoned veterans do the same thing. Oh, I've done speeches a few times. Why should I rehearse? Okay, and what does it say here? This is the important part. Everyone needs to rehearse. So it's equally important. You find out even like, who's the most famous basketball player right now? LeBron James, right? Okay. Even that guy, after years of championships and MVPs and high level things, he still practices. He still practices because if he didn't, his accuracy would go down quite a lot. That's not something you want to do, right? So don't forget that. That might be a question on the final, right? Who needs to practice? And then if you're not paying attention, you might put something down like, oh, only a beginner needs to practice. Well, that's not correct, right? Not correct at all. All right, continuing. A number of years ago, I happened to be in the great pop singer Anne Murray's dressing room. Again, you probably don't know Anne Murray. She was popular in the 70s in Las Vegas, just before her final performance of a lengthy engagement, which means I guess they booked her for many, many weeks, a couple of months there, not just a one-nighter to perform. And so it says she was rehearsing her hit song, Snowbird. Now, again, as it says here, a song she had sung thousands of times and probably at least 10 times that week. Yet, she felt that something wasn't quite right with her last rendition, which means performance. And there she was with her guitar player going over it again just before she took the stage. Now, as you can see, she didn't practice again because she forgot the song. How could she? She sung it 1,000 times. She was practicing because she wanted to maintain a high level of performance ability. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, except in instant breaking news situations, professional newscasters always rehearse what they're going to say before on the air. Again, they make it so easy, like they could just sit there and sprout out news. But if you see them, they push these papers around. Those are their notes. They practice them way before they come on the air because they want to minimize the number of mistakes that they might do. Okay. World-class athletes, like I mentioned before with LeBron, right? Practice their skills over and over throughout their careers. Okay, we're at the bottom here. It's been said that Al McGuinness, it says no relation to the author, who was a famous author. One of the hardest and most accurate shooters in the National Hockey League now. I don't even remember this guy when I was a kid, so he must be, I don't know, my older brother's time. He used to shoot the puck. That's the black circle that the hockey players, they call shoot with the stick. 10,000 times between seasons. So whenever the season would end, his vacation of 2-3 months, he would practice by shooting it 10,000 times, not 1,000, not 2,000, 10,000 times. Wow, unbelievable. So if accomplished superstars like Anne Murray, Al McGuinness, and seasoned broadcasters, remember, we're not talking about salt and pepper here, recognize the need to practice. Excuse me. Why should you or I ever think that we don't need to practice something that we do only occasionally, meaning speech? And if I haven't mentioned it before, many times I'll get a young guy that he just kind of, I don't know, he's busy, maybe has a girlfriend, or he loves Candy Crush during the quarter or the semester. And I can't quite encourage him enough to practice his speech. So he kind of plays around, oh, I'll do this topic and I'll do that topic. And then at the last minute, he hasn't practiced or studied. So he's like, well, I'm a DJ on the weekend, so I'll do you know, I'll do a top my essay on being a DJ or my speech. And he starts out okay because he knows his stuff, but he never put anything together. He never practiced. So eventually all the thoughts come at him at one time and he starts making big, big mistakes and not sure what he said or if he said enough, what he's going to say next. And then the speech can start well, but usually goes down very quickly. So if he had only practiced even just a little bit, it would have been fine, you know. Uh, so yeah. So here we go in the middle. The audience hears what you say only while you're saying it, right? And that's true. They don't hear it later, they hear it only while you're saying it. When you're delivering your speech, the audience doesn't have the time to pause and reflect on your words, nor do they have the opportunity to stop your speech, rewind it like in a tape, and listen to certain parts of it again. The only way to be sure your content, and that's what your speech is about, and delivery, which is equally important, how you give the speech, because again, you can have the best well-written speech in the world, and if you deliver it terribly, right? They give me the best written speech, and I deliver like, well, you know, it's like this. If you want to, let me see, my delivery sucks, right? So I'll ruin all that excellent writing that was put there. So remember, it's not just I push the writing, but you have to have a good delivery also. All right. So when you're delivering the speech, like I said, the audience doesn't have the time to pause and reflect, stop, because you keep on going, you keep on talking. And again, nor do they have the opportunity to stop your speech, hit the rewind button, and listen to certain parts of it again. The only way to be sure your content and delivery are appropriate or good enough, we should say, and effective, right, is to rehearse. Rehearsing is the best way to become familiar with your material. And it is the only way to determine how it actually sounds. So remember, another field that they're not talking about here is stand-up comedians, or what my Korean and Japanese students call gag man. It looks so natural. It looks like the guy just comes out there, hello, how's everybody doing? You have a nice audience here. And then he just starts telling jokes. And you're like, you know, I can do that. That's no problem. But again, you don't understand. The intelligent person that does the stand-up comedy will, like a speech, write out a skeleton, write the 3 levels, write where he's going to pause or she's going to pause, write her most important jokes, know where they are, and practice and rehearse. And they also time themselves because, you know, when you go to a club, depends on the manager, the owner. The owner might say, I want you out there for 15 minutes. And that 15 minutes can be a heck of a long time. If you haven't rehearsed or practiced, it'll seem like an hour. Or he might say, we don't have that many comics and I don't want you to do 30 minutes. So you just can't go up there and play and think, did I have enough jokes? You better time it out and know that you need more jokes for 30 minutes than 15. And you have to have more pauses and you still have to rehearse it. And then the more you practice it and know, I know every joke, I know where everything is. I'm not going to get confused. And I've timed it out to be, you know, 15 or 30 minutes. So it's the same thing. So all these people that look natural to you and they don't sweat and everything, it's not because they can just do things without practicing or knowing. It's because they do put the skill in there and do it. That's why. Okay. So rehearsing allows you to identify and eliminate words that you have difficulty pronouncing and phrases that look fine on paper but turn into tongue twisters at the lectern. Okay, let me go through some words here. First of all, there's some good skill here. A lot of times when you write it, and like I said, the first draft, you write it, you don't do any correcting. You correct it later. So see, as you practice, you might find that there's some certain words that were funny in your head, but you have a difficult time pronouncing them. And you want to make sure that your speech is clear, right? And you don't have to feel ashamed about this, you know. Realize here, like English is not your first language. So it's just like if, let's say, I'll give you my best example. If I'm taking a speech class in Korea, let's say I moved to Korea. Well, Korean's not my first language. So there's words that Korean people can pronounce easily that are going to be difficult for me to pronounce. That's why I always tell when I'm teaching an English class, I always tell my students that always have an option word for a word that maybe gives you trouble, right? So I'll give you again, I'm not giving you my example. There's a word that Korean people say, and at first I said it to Korean people the way I heard it, but again, my ear was not trained in Korean. So I heard this word like quiddlechi. That's how it sounded to me. And that's a form of saying, you know, yes, really? So I would tell my student quiddlechi, and they would say, what the hell are you saying, right? But for Korean people, the sound is more gu, right? So it's a quiddlechi. But that is hard for me to do. And especially if I had to do a speech and I was a little bit nervous. So my substitute word is majayo. So if you find in your speech there's some English words that are tough for you to pronounce, use a substitute, right? So again, rehearsing helps you find and eliminate these words or a phrase that might be difficult. They look fine on the paper, but you get it to a tongue twister, you know, at the lectern. And again, if you forgot, the lectern is the rectangular large piece of wood that you stand behind to give a speech or a teacher to teach a class, right? So that's the lectern. Rehearsing lets you determine whether your sentences are too long, right? That's another thing. It might sound well. The first time you write it down on the draft, you don't do corrections. So as you do them, you're like, uh-oh, I gotta put some periods in these sentences. My sentences are too long, right? And as you see the funny part here, it's probably not possible for them to be too short, you know, not at all. Okay. So rehearsing helps you determine pacing. It's another thing, a skill you have to master, pacing. And this is where pauses will be the most effective. Yes, to help you pace, you pause. You don't read your speech like, rehearsing helps you determine pacing, where pause will help the most effective. Da, 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 da. You don't do that. You have to do it. Rehearsing helps you determine pacing. Rest, 1, 2, 3. Where pauses will be the most effective, 1, 2. And where added emphasis is required, 1, 2. So rehearsing helps you determine pacing and where they will be the most effective. They might help the chokes in your speech or the important topic points. Okay. Continuing a great deal of rewriting and improvement of your material will take place during proper rehearsal. So guarantee yourself this. That's where you will improve. Just tell yourself, hey, if I rehearse and edit, I'm guaranteed to improve my speech. So look at it that way instead of saying, I don't have the time to rehearse. Don't do that. Next, the only way to accurately time the length of your speech is to rehearse it. So I told you, the gag men time their speech. Use the clock. Let's say you have to give a 15-minute speech. My class would be 3 to 5 minutes. So you just say your speech as is and then look at it for the first time and you're like, oh my God, my speech is only 7 minutes. Right? And it happens in my class too. I say 3 to 5 minutes and a student gives a speech that's 1 minute and 30 seconds. It's like, I can't give them a good grade. That's way, way, way too short, right? So learn how to use the clock to monitor and time your speech. Okay, in the middle here, it's a good idea to rehearse a talk at a lectern with your visual aids, if any. Remember, you and your speech are more important than your visual aids. Okay, don't try to hide behind your visual aids. That's all the people will remember, and not what you're trying to do, which is put across the main point of your speech. Okay? Next, be careful about heeding. Heeding means to take. So it says heeding the advice. So taking the advice you receive from members of your practice audience. See, so if you practice in front of some classmates or friends, not like me, dogs and cats, they can give you actual good information that you will need, right? So again, another guaranteed way to improve your speech. Definitely. That's how you do it. All right. Unless the person advising you is a skilled speaker or the advice is obviously sound, now this is a judgment call here. Rely more on your own instincts about how well the rehearsal went. Okay. So again, it's a judgment call because it's saying here, unless the person advising you is a skilled speaker, or the advice is obviously sound, rely more on your instincts about how well the rehearsal went. So I say this a little differently. Yes, rely on your own instincts if you think it went well, but not everybody's instincts are good. And the way this is worded here sounds almost like they're saying your friend is kind of dumb. But, if you have friends that are not dumb, then you should listen to them too. So for me, it's a mix, 50-50 of both, That's how it's done. Okay. Be sure that the rehearsal audience understands that you will be stopping frequently to make changes in wording and to try different approaches in your delivery. So that's your practice time. Again, like a professional stand-up comedians, before they hit the big cities, New York, LA, Chicago, Miami, they will practice in these small cities and small comic clubs with small crowds late at night. And that's where they will practice and make their mistakes. And who really cares? They don't want to make their mistakes at the big city comic clubs because they pay the most. And that's where agents are to maybe have the comedian have its own special or act in a movie or a TV show. And the same with as you begin your career, because we talked about the reading here, broadcasters earlier. Broadcasters don't start. You go to broadcasting school and then, hey, I want to work in LA or Chicago. It doesn't work that way. They will send you to the smallest radio station or TV station in New Mexico or South Dakota. If you're doing radio, they might put you on the 1 in the morning shift where not many people are awake, not many people are listening to you. Nobody reads the news about what happens in South Dakota, right? So they let you make all the mistakes you can. And you kind of travel out that way your first few years in the business, and you go from the lowest markets to the middle markets until finally you have good tapes of yourself and someone wants to take a chance on you in a big city, right? Because now you are seasoned. You are not a beginner ready to make all kinds of mistakes, okay? So at the bottom, do not attempt an uninterrupted run through, even for timing purposes, until you are comfortable with your content. So it says, don't give a full speech yet to your friends who are watching you. Keep on chopping it up in different bits and pieces until you are comfortable. Because again, like I told you, the professional people know what's in the introduction part, what's in the body, and then how they conclude their speech or essay material or jokes or broadcasting. And until you stop making mistakes and you're comfortable, then you can try the complete run through. Okay? That's how you do it. That's how you do it. Okay, let's move to the next page. Excuse me, do I need some soju? What's going on here? I'm not getting sick, am I? The ideal way to talk would be the same way, but in front of an experienced, skilled speaking coach who will record your rehearsal so that the two of you can view and critique it together. So you could do that, but that's probably gonna cost you, cost you money, because no professional will really do it uh, for free. It just won't happen. But you can go that route if you think it'll help you, if you can afford it. Next, although you should take a professional coach's advice more seriously than you would that of friends, relatives, and colleagues, right? Remember that the speech is yours and that you alone will be responsible for the effect it will have on the audience. Again, don't take yourself too seriously. Be seriously enough that you know that you are responsible, but your friends are intelligent, so everybody can help you. I don't know how many times I thought I had thought completely about a problem, and then someone came up and said something, and I said, how come I never thought of that, right? So your friends and colleagues can be very helpful for you. Don't take it all on yourself, okay? Next, keep an open mind. But if you're uncomfortable with the expert advice, be sure that the coach has compelling, which means important, and that you should listen to reasons before you accept any suggested changes that don't feel right to you. Again, so this is more kind of like on my thinking. So again, to help you with compelling, you go to the doctor, you've been smoking 2 packs a day for over 10 years. The doctor says, if you don't stop smoking, within 5 years, you're going to have lung cancer. So that is very compelling to make you stop. If you continue, you've been smoking for over 10 years, so half of that time you will have lung cancer. So that compels you to stop. Now, what they're trying to work this in here is make sure, well, he'll let you know that you listen to this, because sometimes people are egotistical and they think that they're perfect and they don't make any mistakes, and they don't even see the mistakes that they make, right? And the expert says, I'm seeing this here. You should stop this, or you should do this or that. And if the person has a lot of ego, they're not going to listen. So this point is telling you, listen to the expert, listen to his advice, right? So I'll tell you something. I'll give you another example. I used to have the situation where I had young guys that told me that they were great drivers and they could drive very fast and handle the car and all that stuff. But again, that's not really important, right? But to a young guy, that was important stuff. So yet they would tell me, I took the driving exam and I didn't pass. Okay. So I learned something. Again, maybe this person can on the street drives very well and follows all the rules, but I was curious, why is this person not passing the test? It's not like an older person that's nervous and hasn't driven their whole life and wants to know what's going on, right? Uh, and I found out why they were failing, because they were so eager to get on the road, they didn't do the small preparations that the driving instructor does not tell you. The person just watches you and sees if you do them or not. So the things they were missing is when you get in the car, and the instructor cannot tell you, but they're watching to see, do you check your rear view mirror and fix it? Do you check your side mirrors? Some of these guys even forgot to put the seatbelt on. They were so crazy about getting on the road and impressing the driver. Do you check it? Do you check your brakes? Do you check your turn signals? Do you look behind yourself before you move out? So just imagine you're this young guy and you're like, I could drive 100 miles an hour and never cross the line, and I can make a stop so fast, but they never check their mirrors, never check their turn signals, because you could start driving and if they're not working, you got to do hand signals, right? So all these preparatory things that they don't say to you and watch, they were taking these points away. So again, their driving might have been perfect, but they weren't doing the safety issues. So again, if you're lucky and the driver instructor can tell you, hey, do these things and you'll pass the test, you better listen. Right. So you have an expert tell you what you're doing wrong in your speech. And if you're paying them, you should listen, right? Okay, next. You can rehearse by yourself, but try to do so at least once standing at a lectern. So what they're saying here, when I used to take speech class, I knew people that did just practice sitting down at a table or lying down on the couch. And even though eventually they felt confident with their material, once they stood up and behind the lectern, they got nervous because they hadn't practiced that way even one time. So there you go. Take all these things as advice that can help you. Now, here's some other advice. Do not rehearse in front of a mirror. This is more of a psychological advice. The author says you'll spend far much time and energy looking at yourself rather than concentrating on content and delivery, all the while forgetting that you're actually seeing things backward in any event. Okay. I've read other books on this issue, and most of the time they mention women. Why? Because a lot of women worry and spend a lot of time trying to look beautiful, and they accomplish it because many men will compliment them, and maybe they feel more pressure standing up in front of a bunch of people. uh, but what happens is you look in the mirror, not only your makeup, and this can happen to men, you start criticizing everything you do, from the way your lips move to your body language. Now if your body language is wild, then that's good, but all your naturalness that you need to use for your speech, you don't need to look at it. You don't need to over criticize you and your technique. So, like it says here, you'll spend far too much time and energy looking at yourself rather than concentrating. Am I giving the full content, or AKA meaning, of my speech? And then is my delivery, you have to shoot for more understandable than a person might, like a woman might say, I have to look beautiful. Or a guy might say, I have to look cool. But your delivery is not up to par, you know. So that's some more advice. This page is full of all kinds of advice. Then there is a lot of effective informal rehearsing that you can do. Simply reading the speech out loud is helpful. Again, get behind the lectern, and when you're got tired of that, then you can read the speech out loud as you walk around. I mean, I knew guys that practiced in the shower, right? But they already kind of had their material down. It was just kind of like, as we call, overkill. Okay. Continuing, you can go over the main points, right? That's what it's purposely for. And experiment with different words and phrases in your mind every chance you get. Okay, such as when showering, right? See, there we go, showering, riding in elevators, or waiting in traffic. Yeah, but keep your eyes on the road. Guys that do that, then they, unless the traffic's not moving, they'll look at the paper. Sometimes they tape themselves and listen to it in the car and then mimic their own sounds. So there you go. Next, you can slip parts of the speech into everyday conversations with colleagues, friends, or family members. Now that's interesting. That's kind of overkill. So they're saying you're talking to your brother or your mom, and you're talking about a regular subject, and then you say parts of your speech in the conversation. I've actually never known anybody that would do that, but you know, if it works, it works. I don't know. It might sound a little strange. Okay, and ending on the bottom. It is not possible to over-rehearse. So see, there you go. That's the thinking. You do all this stuff that you would never do, and the bottom line is it's because it's not possible to over-rehearse. That's the thinking. That's the rationale. So finishing up, the more you rehearse either formally or informally, the more comfortable and confident you will be when you stand at the lectern and say, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be here. Rather than unaccustomed I am to public speaking. So this goes back to a private or prior chapter where it's stressed, don't say negative things. Don't apologize. Some people would take that very negatively in the beginning, right? So Instead, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be here, right? So don't say something, I'm unaccustomed. I've never done this before. I'm so nervous. I don't know what to say. I hope I do a good job. Some people will have sympathy for you, and other people will just, it will turn them off. That's not what you want. So we're into our famous in a nutshell. All talks need to be rehearsed, all of them. Don't forget it. And all people need to rehearse. 2, professionals in all walks of life continuously practice their craft. So why shouldn't you practice something you do only occasionally? So professionals do it all the time, and they still practice. That's the meaning here. So if you just once in a while do it, shouldn't you practice even more? 3, rehearsing allows you to eliminate words you have difficulty pronouncing. And again, I went over that a lot earlier. Have a alternate or substitute word. 4, rehearsing will alert you to difficult or cumbersome phrasing. So cumbersome is kind of blocky, too thick phrasing, so you might want to throw that out. I don't know why this author likes to use these old words for it. Unbelievable. I barely remember them. 5, the only way to know how a speech actually sounds is to rehearse it out loud. And that's why I told you also, some classmates I know taped the speech they gave and listened to it in the car and mimicked it as they drove, right? Then you'll actually know how you sound. You can work on certain things if you don't like it. There's certain things you pronounce a certain way, and you're not comfortable with it. 6, rehearsing is the only way to accurately time your presentation. So start practicing with that stopwatch, okay? You can use your clock. 7, rehearse at least once at a lectern with your visual aids if you're going to use them, right? If any. Again, don't stand behind your visual aids. They are an aid, not the speech. The point of your speech is what is important. 8, don't attempt an uninterrupted run through, even for timing purposes, unless you're completely comfortable with your content. So again, you can't do that when you're like, what was in the middle? Was that part in the conclusion? Or did I say it in the introduction? If you're at that point, then don't try the complete run through. 9, rehearsing in front of a mirror is useless and possibly harmful. Because again, just imagine there's some things you over criticize yourself and you don't like them as you practice in front of a mirror. And then the day of your speech, you start negatively thinking about it. I better not move my lip this way, or I better watch how I crinkle my nose, or, you got to throw that stuff out the window and just think about the content and delivery of your speech. 10, there are a lot of opportunities to informally rehearse the talk in your mind. Again, the shower, walking around your house, inserting them in the elevator, right? Inserting them in talks with your family members. 11, look for opportunities to rehearse parts of your talk during normal conversations. 12, try out parts of your speech on colleagues, friends, or family members. 12, it's not possible to over-rehearse. Never forget that. Remember the hockey player between the seasons, the summer break, 10,000 times practice. Okay, so on to the second part, which are more skills that I think we need and that are important. Becoming a more interesting speaker. You don't want to be boring. You want to be interesting. That's what you want. going to start right here. No matter how experienced and comfortable you become in front of groups, there is always room to become an even more interesting speaker. Right? Even more room. Broadening your horizons and interests, which means developing them, expanding, right? Broadening, expanding your horizons and interests, what you study, what you want to learn about, will enhance or improve the knowledge and skills you already possess and help you acquire new beneficial ones. Okay? And of course, you need to approach everything you do with the right attitude. Gotta have a right attitude. Knowledge. There are 3 ways to acquire knowledge. This sounds also like a good question for the final exam, right? You want to know what they are? Here we go. Study is one. So you study more. Experience and being around people who know more than you do. So experience, as you give speeches over time, that will give you skill and confidence. And then if you're around people who know more than you do, you can be like a sponge and absorb all the knowledge that they give you directly or indirectly. Okay? All 3 methods are useful, but the most efficient is study. Reading is to the mind what exercise is to the body. Those who don't read are no better off than those who can't read. That's interesting, right? So if you can't read, that figures that's pretty bad, right? You're what's called illiterate. And it says, well, if you don't read and you can read, then you're the same level as them. So besides the negativity there, it's meant to push you in that you're wasting your skill. You're wasting your opportunity. You have the ability to read, so take advantage of it and improve your skills. Okay. Next, a sure way to become a boring person. Nobody wants to be boring. And by extension, a boring speaker is to be interested only in your work. So that's called a one-frame mind or one-track mind. To be a better informed and more interesting person and speaker, at least 1/4 of your reading should be outside your occupational field. At the bottom, this will help you enormously in developing appropriate analogies and illustrations for your talks. So analogies are similar incidents, but in other fields, right? And so what they're saying here is that if you just, let's say you gave speeches on cars, right? You worked for General Motors Company and you gave speeches on cars. If all you really cared about and studied about were cars, if some other speaker, even though you're really good, some other speaker came around and had a lot of other interests, they can make different, as they say here, analogies from other fields and compare them to cars. And if people find them interesting, then you're going to sound boring because all you do is say cars, cars, cars. And this person compares cars to planes or cars to boats or who knows what. So you don't want to become a boring speaker. Okay, we're up here on the top left. Experience is a wonderful teacher. And mentors will provide you with a store of examples that you can use as evidence in your speeches. Try to learn from everything that happens around you. Yes, indeed. Try to learn from everything that happens around you. And everybody has something that they can teach you. Okay. Yes, sir. Try to learn from everything that happens around you. Make notes of interesting observations, opinions, quotations from people, and statistics. And develop a filing system that will allow you to easily find and refer to this material when you're preparing for a talk. So my example here is, I don't know if you guys know about the American comedian Jerry Seinfeld. He had the #1 comedian show in the 90s from 1990 through 1999. And on reruns, I think it's Channel 13, Monday through Friday, you can see his show. The old show will come on. They show two back to back. So one comes on at 10, last 30 minutes, then another one comes on 10:30. If you listen to his comedy, it is like 90% observations of people, right? He says, oh, this guy doesn't like a woman with large hands. They call them man hands, or people just follow and they don't do this. So it's all observation. So if you start observing people and situations, quotations, famous quotations, like they said Winston Churchill, or even statistics, you will add some charisma and some non-boring attitude to your speeches, right? For example, if we'll go statistics, a lot of people are in favor of a severe gun control system. They think that if you take away the guns from the regular people, you will have less, school shootings or what have you. But it has shown, statistics have shown, I had to listen to them personally. I didn't believe them, but in cities where people can own guns, anybody can own a gun, unless you fail a background check, but normal citizens, the crime rate is lower than places where what they want is where nobody has guns, right? And why is that? They interviewed criminals, and people that were in prison, and they said, like, for example, Arizona has, like, everybody can have a concealed weapon. California, it's quite hard because they've taken a lot of that ability away. And the criminal said, hey, I won't even attack a grandmother in Arizona because she might have a concealed pistol in her handbag, so I won't do it. But the areas I know where normal citizens are not allowed to have guns, it's very hard for them to get guns. That's where I do most of my crime because there's no way that I'm going to get shot. The possibility is very low. So again, observations, opinions, quotations, and statistics. Okay, in the middle, never put a limit on your search for knowledge. There's no such thing as an uninteresting subject, just disinterested people, right? So they're trying to talk to your ego here, okay? What they're saying is, some people will say, or a lot of people will say, oh, this subject you just talked to me about, I'm not interested in it at all, right? I don't want to listen to anything. But they're saying you should, just to gain some basic knowledge in it, because you might be able to talk about it or use it in your speech. So that's why you are a disinterested person if you do not want to. Okay? Until you understand something completely, be open-minded about it. Become interested before you become judgmental, which means I don't believe it, what have you. And I'll tell you, this has happened through the years. I've seen it as I've grown up, even with our experts. They probably have it on YouTube or you could buy it, but in England in the 90s, they came out with these tapes. They were called the trials, which is like the hardships that you go through of life. And they were all tapings of animals that traditionally people said were impossible or it's not true. So, for example, traditionally marine biologists had said sharks never sleep. They just constantly swim. The water has to go through their gills. And they swim until they die. And that was traditionally accepted because you had a marine biologist telling you that, right? They even, I'll tell you on a more basic level, people who went out in a large ship and the ship sunk and people were, you know, sitting in the little rowboat or a raft for many, many days or weeks. And when they were finally rescued, people would say, "Did you see anything strange in the ocean?" And they would say, "I saw this giant great white, like Jaws, jump over the raft." And the marine biologist would say, "You're crazy. Did you drink the seawater? Because the seawater will make you crazy." A large, you know, Jaws like great white shark can weigh 2,000 pounds. There's no way that it could jump completely out of the water and over your raft. But again, all you have to do is go to YouTube. You will see many tapes now of 2,000-pound great white sharks jumping completely out of the ocean and catching seals in midair. So again, the people were told they were wrong, even though they saw it. So back to my trials of life. So again, supposedly, according to the marine experts, sharks never slept. And they had these guys diving in some ocean, and then they saw this underwater cave, and they said, "Hey, let's go in this cave. Maybe there's money in there or treasure." And they went inside the cave, and there was, I don't know, 15, 20 sharks asleep inside the cave. So again, proven wrong, the experts. So what they're saying here is for you, don't be judgmental. Don't say, no, 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 no. Always have an open mind. Okay? Continuing, the person who knows how something is done can give a good speech about it, but the person who knows why it is done will give a great speech. So that's my comparison to before. You might have all the knowledge, but someone has other knowledge and things that make it sound much more interesting. People will enjoy it more, unfortunately. At the bottom here, 2 areas of knowledge that you should never stop developing are your vocabulary and grasp of grammar, right? Traditionally, people love it when you have a big vocabulary. It will make you sound very interesting. You don't want to repeat the same words and same words. Being able to find the precise, and that means the exact words, and use them correctly will help enormously or humongously, gigantically in speech preparation and delivery. Yeah, if your words can be as precise as they can be, there's no room for confusion with your audience, and that's fantastic. Anytime you encounter or come across a word that you don't know the meaning of or pronunciation of, look it up in a dictionary and make it a part of your vocabulary. You should also take note of the synonyms, words that sound the same, that are different, and antonyms listed for such words. A way to help you with this is doing crossword puzzles. It's a fun way to improve the vocabulary. And this is something, since I was taught that way, I'm really worried about young people that I've seen. We were not allowed to cuss, say the F word and say the S word and the B word and all that stuff. We were not allowed to. My mother caught me doing that, and she put soap in my mouth to clean up my grammar. And people look down on people like that. It showed that they had a very, very low vocabulary. So I'm kind of worried because young people now, they're just forcing it out there. They just want to cuss on everything. and their vocabularies are very, very low. So don't fall in that trap. Sound like a smart person. Become a smart person. And giving speeches will help you on that road. Next, skills. You must continually hone, which means practice the skills you have through use or practice, while at the same time acquiring or getting new skills that will enhance your speaking ability. Possessing a single talent will take you only so far and will definitely limit your scope as a speaker. So again, it's like I told you, if all you do is talk about cars, this will limit your range as a speaker. There are 3 good ways to identify the skills you already possess or have, and to discover those that you may be lacking, or lacking means are weak in. Most people don't have a problem with the first method. It's simply objectively assessing or counting what you do and don't do well. So you make a list. These 10 things I don't do well, and these 10 things I do. However, it's sometimes difficult to be sufficiently objective. So the second method is to ask others, such as colleagues, bosses, and mentors, who you look for guidance, for their assessments or their critiques. Finally, and this is the method most often looked, you have to try new things and try old things in different ways. Putting a limit on what you do puts a limit on what you can do. So sounds confusing, right? But what they're saying is, if you say, by putting a limit on yourself, I only want to learn about cars, then that'll put a limit on what you can do, because you're not looking into other fields. Next, if you try new things or doing old things in new ways, you might discover a skill that you didn't know you had, and you might identify a skill that you should or would like to develop. Opportunities are never missed. Other people will take advantage of those if you don't. So that's kind of tongue in cheek. What they're saying is, if you are given an opportunity, don't miss it. Traditionally they say then it'll be gone, but what they're saying here is, no, the opportunity won't be gone. Someone else will take advantage of it, right? So that's what they're trying to push you here. When you aren't improving, someone else is. And when you encounter that person that is improving, you will come in second. Okay. On the bottom, the skills you need to acquire are often evident in your surroundings. So that means they're obvious in your surroundings. Always ask yourself which skills would help you enhance or improve the application of your knowledge, whatever you're going to be doing, wherever you're going to be doing it. For example, the engineer who designs a product and then decides to sell it should take some sales training, right? Once he decides he wants to sell, he should learn and take some sales training. It's usually instructive to ask successful people in your field to recommend areas of improvement. So what they're saying there in the bottom sentence is, go to people who are successful in your field and just ask them, hey, you've been doing this a long time. Can you tell me what areas I might need to improve on, or what areas you improved on that helped you? And maybe I can follow your example. So wise advice. You should pay attention to it. Attitude. Not only do you need to develop positive attitudes about yourself, but you must also understand the attitudes of people you deal with, especially those of your audience members. An audience is not an amorphous mass. It's made up of individuals who react as individuals. Okay, so it says, besides developing positive attitudes about yourself, you must also understand the attitudes of the people you deal with, especially those of your audience members. An audience is not just some unknown mass. It's made of individuals who react as individuals. However, we're all similar when it comes to how we want to be treated. Yes, this is true. We want to be liked and we want to feel important. To become a more interesting person and speaker, you need to treat people as if you like them and find ways to sincerely make them feel important. There is nothing hypocritical about this. Okay, what that means is, if you're a hypocrite, it means you say something but do something else. Like I could tell you, hey, don't smoke cigarettes, they're bad for your health. And you find out I smoke a pack a day. So what I tell you is not what I do, and I'm a hypocrite for doing that. So again, the emphasis here is you need to treat people as if you like them. Find ways to sincerely make them feel important. Once you make them feel important, they'll really want to listen to your speech. And there's nothing hypocritical about this. Everyone, by virtue of being human, has the right to be treated decently. So everyone deserves to at least be treated decently. If you can't find some way to make a person feel important, at least never make them feel unimportant. That's like an old saying that I grew up with, which was, if you have nothing good to say to someone, then don't say anything, because all you have is something rude. Again, something I see lost here. Here it's like, even if it's rude, you better say something to somebody, right? It's a different change. On the bottom, when you develop the right attitude toward other people, you will carry it over in your role as a speaker, and you will understand and relate to your audiences more effectively. Audiences have a keen sense of how you feel about them. So what that means by a keen sense is that the audience can feel if you start talking down to them, or you don't like that you're talking to them. They can feel it and maybe see it. So be careful. Many years ago, there was a Ripley's Believe It or Not cartoon depicting, which means showing, an ordinary iron bar worth about $5. The cartoon then pointed out that the iron bar made into horseshoes would be worth about 10 bucks. If it was made into sewing needles, it would be worth $3,285. If it was turned into balance springs for watches, it would be worth $250,000, an increase of 50,000%. Knowledge and skills are very much like that iron bar. They're worth only what you do with them. So they're trying to tell you to apply your skills to the highest level. Okay? In a nutshell, continually expand your skills and knowledge base, particularly your vocabulary and grammar. 2, at least 1/4 of your reading should be outside your field of work, which will help you develop a appropriate analogies, examples, and illustrations for your talks. 3, be observant. Try to learn from everything that goes on around you. Life has many things to teach you, everybody, even homeless people, handicapped people, whoever think you don't think so, but they do. They have things to teach you. 4, make extensive notes. So that means make a lot of them. Develop a filing system that will allow you to easily find and refer to your notes. 6, there's no such thing as an uninteresting subject, just disinterested people. 7, be open-minded. Become interested before you become judgmental. 8, try doing new things and doing old things in new ways. Learn how to understand people. Okay. And I think that's the end. Oh, we got 3 more. 10, remember that an audience is not an amorphous mass or just some unknown mass of size and people. It's made up of individuals who react as individuals. 11, always consider your audience's point of view. Yes, if not, you can make them very angry. 12, your knowledge and skills are worth only what you do with them. So that's back to the iron bar example. Aim your skills to get the most out of them, value-wise and price-wise. So that's it for our last video lecture of this quarter for public speaking. I enjoyed having you as students and look forward to sometime in the future having you back. You know, I thought I would be with you next quarter, but I guess not. But hopefully the quarter after. Okay. All right. So share and study your work. Okay. Bye-bye.